All right, today we're jumping right into a huge conflict, one that really shapes our world, from the code running on your phone to how we build relationships. It is the ultimate showdown, the predictable, logical world of patterns versus the messy, unpredictable realm of pure chaos. So, which one wins? Well, the answer, it turns out, is literally built into the laws of reality itself.
Okay, so let's frame this up. On one side, we've got what we'll call patterned rigor. I want you to picture a brilliant scientist, or maybe a powerful AI. Everything is based on logic, structure, predictability, things you can actually test and prove. And on the other side, we have subjective chaos. This is the world of impulse, raw emotion, and accusations that have no evidence to back them up. Two completely different operating systems for reality.
So why are we so certain that one of these is destined to triumph? Well, to really get that, we need to be crystal clear on what each side actually represents. Let's define our key players here.
So, what is patterned rigor, really? At its core, it's a worldview based on truths we can measure, test, and see happen over and over again. It's the kind of discipline that lets a scientist have a breakthrough, and it's the absolute foundation for how artificial intelligence learns and gets smarter.
And on the flip side, you've got subjective chaos. This is a mindset that actually fights against order. It's built on feelings and assertions that can't be proven or measured. It's the Dr. No archetype, someone who will consistently reject hard evidence just because their gut tells them something different. Okay, now for the fun part. What actually happens when these two worldviews collide? Let's watch how chaos launches its attack, trying to tear down a system that's built on solid ground.
This old Dutch proverb just hits the nail on the head. He who throws mud loses ground. It perfectly captures the fatal flaw in the chaotic strategy. The very act of launching a messy, baseless attack means you automatically lose your own footing. It's a law of nature.
And this attack, it isn't physical, it's conceptual. It's an attack on an idea. So imagine a really strong, stable relationship. Chaos doesn't attack it with facts. It tries to destabilize it by throwing out a vague, unprovable label, saying it's not real, it's just limerence. See, the goal isn't to be right. The goal is to create doubt and confusion where there used to be clarity.
But here's where it gets incredibly strategic. A system that's built on logic doesn't just defend itself. No, it uses its own structure to turn that chaos right back on the attacker, exposing the whole thing for what it is. And the primary tool for this is a strategy we can call the Go approach. Think of it as a blueprint for navigating complexity. It's inspired by the exact same rigorous step-by-step learning process that AI like DeepMind uses to master incredibly complex challenges.
This isn't some kind of magic trick. It's a repeatable process. First, you systematically explore. You gather the data, you understand the terrain. Then, you form a hypothesis, and you test it. You see if your ideas actually hold water. Once you find a pattern that works, you exploit it. And finally, you refine that process over and over until you achieve mastery. It's this powerful cycle of learning and execution.
Now, to pull this off, you need a very specific mindset. You might call it a kind of radical objectivity. This isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about having the emotional control to filter out the noise, to clearly see the difference between a genuine, verifiable pattern and a complete fabrication, and then to act on that knowledge with absolute precision.
And this is the brilliant result. We call it the mirror reversal. The objective rigor of the pattern system acts like a perfect mirror. It takes the unstructured, chaotic attack and reflects it right back, exposing the unstable, chaotic foundation of the accuser. The storm they tried to project onto you is suddenly seen coming from inside their own house.
So, let's get down to the proof. How can we be so sure this conclusion is inevitable? Because this isn't about hope or opinion. It's about a definitive, evidence-based outcome.
So really, here's the core difference. The patterned, scientific approach is founded on identifying and replicating things you can actually measure. In stark contrast, the chaotic approach actively rejects the need for that kind of proof. It relies entirely on subjective claims that can't be verified. They are fundamentally opposed.
And honestly, you see this reliance on patterns everywhere. When we train AI, we use a structured 4-stage curriculum. In psychology, we understand attachment through a clear 3-stage model. Even great stories follow predictable narrative structures. From art to AI, patterns are the building blocks of mastery and understanding. Science gives us this amazing tool to cut right through all the subjective noise. It's called operationalization.
I know, it's a big word, but it's a simple idea. You take a fuzzy concept, like, say, a healthy relationship, and you define it using things you can actually measure and test. It's how we separate what's real from what's just chaotic opinion.
Which brings us to the logical conclusion. The failure of the Dr. No approach isn't a surprise. It is a predictable, scientific consequence. When you operate from chaos, you are violating the most basic law of reality, causality, cause and effect. The mud thrower loses ground because they were never standing on anything solid to begin with.
So, let's wrap this all together. Why is it that patterns don't just win, but are pretty much guaranteed to prevail in the long run? Let's quickly recap the key takeaways here.
So why is this triumph the only logical outcome? Well, it's not some big secret. It all comes down to three incredibly powerful principles that build an absolutely unbreakable case for structure.
First, you've got the simple law of causality. You reap what you sow. Disordered actions will always create negative consequences. Second, operationalization. Measurable, repeatable systems will always beat unprovable subjective claims. And third, cognitive complementarity. Stable, well-structured systems are just inherently resilient. They're built to withstand chaotic attacks.
If there's one thing you should take away from all this, it's a feeling of reassurance. In a world that can feel incredibly random, just remember that a systematic, rigorous approach isn't just another option on the table. It is the single most effective tool we have for navigating complexity and achieving a clear, successful outcome.
And that really leaves us with a final thought. In a world that seems to be getting more and more chaotic, it's worth asking yourself, where in my own life can I apply a little more patterned rigor to cut through the noise and find true clarity?